Hey, it's Sam here from Spun, and today I'm showing you how to make a New York style cheesecake. This is my grandmother's cheesecake recipe. She's been making it for generations. I absolutely love it, and it's a little bit different than other cheesecake recipes I've shared in the past because instead of the sour cream being baked into, the body of the cheesecake, it goes on top. So it's like a nice little layer of sweetened sour cream. That might sound kind of weird, but it's actually delicious. And if you've ever tried a cheesecake like this, you know what I'm talking about. So let's get started with the crust. So we need 1.5 cups of crushed graham cracker crumbs. Buy them pre-crushed, crush your own, whatever works better for you. We're just going to add a tablespoon of granulated sugar. Now, this crust is slightly different from my standard go-to version that I use like all of my other recipes. That's because I took my mom's crust and I did have to slightly tweak it, but I wanted to stay as true to her original recipe as possible because it's just that good. So let me just get that sugar nicely distributed in with the graham cracker crumbs. And this is 4 tablespoons of butter. Unsalted or salted should be fine here. This is unsalted. You want to make sure it's not super hot. If it's a little warm, that's okay, but you don't want it to be really hot. Go ahead and put this in, and we will toss these ingredients together until you have a mixture that's kind of like wet and sandy looking. A fork actually works a little bit better for doing this, but why dirty any extra dishes? Not like I wash them. I make Nikki wash them, or Andy. We've got 2 sisters here today. Okay, so we're going to bake this in a 9-inch springform pan. My mom always made hers in a 10-inch springform, so you could do that. You're just going to cut down the baking time a little bit. Speaking of baking time, get your oven preheating. 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Seems low. It's what we bake it on, 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Get that preheating and make sure you have a rack in the center of the oven because we're going to be baking it in the middle rack. Where was I? Whew, I always almost forget to say the baking time. So 9-inch springform pan is what I am using. Let's go ahead and pour the crumbs in here. All right, and we're just going to press this evenly into the bottom and up the sides of the cheesecake. And I've mentioned before that when you're making a cheesecake, a really nice way to keep it from cracking is to make sure that the crust goes up higher than the body of the cheesecake. Because one main way cracking can occur is as the cheesecake cools, it'll stick to the sides of the pan, and then that'll cause some tension and cause some cracks. I do still like to press up this crust a bit, but it's not as important here because if you end up with a crack, you're putting a little sour cream hat on top of the cheesecake, so no one's gonna know. But I am pretty particular about this, so still do what I can. I love this cheesecake. Great for Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner. It's so good. All right, we're just going to set this aside. I'm actually going to be baking the cheesecake on a parchment lined baking pan. I really recommend that. We don't do a water bath. I never do a water bath with my cheesecake. It's never a problem. Mom didn't do a water bath either. But sometimes springform pans can leak. If that happens, it's better to have your pan leak on a parchment or foil lined tray rather than leak right into the oven where your oven's gonna get all smoky. And then if it leaks on the tray, you have the parchment or foil so you can just toss it. Your tray's not ruined either. All right, we'll set this aside for now. No need to pre-bake it or anything like that. Grab yourself a large mixing bowl. And the next ingredient I wanna talk about is our cream cheese. Use a brick style cream cheese. As you can see, I have here. Don't use the tub style cream cheese. It has additives in it and it doesn't work quite as well. It doesn't set up properly. I have recently learned that a lot of people outside of the US don't necessarily have access to the brick style cream cheese, or I think sometimes it's called Philadelphia. If anyone has a recommendation that I could tell these people that they could use instead that you've tested, I'd love to hear it, but I can only recommend things I've actually tested myself. So this is 24 ounces or 3 standard bricks, and these are softened. So if they're too cold, you're gonna end up with a lumpy cheesecake. So you want these to be nice and soft. So yeah, I can squish it with my spatula nicely. Perfect. You're going to add 1 cup of granulated sugar, and I'm also going to add 1.5 teaspoons or 1/2 tablespoon of vanilla extract. Mama would just throw everything together when making cheesecake, but experience does not allow me to do that. So we're going to add our eggs separately in a moment. Oh, and I almost forgot our salt. You just need an 1/8 teaspoon of salt. All right, now we will beat everything together. You wanna make sure this is nice and smooth, lump-free. You also don't want to beat too much air into it. And now we will add our eggs. You need 5 large eggs for this recipe. Ideally, they should be room temperature / same temperature as your cream cheese. I recommend adding these 1 at a time. Before I add them, I crack them in a separate dish, and I give that a quick little mix. I used to tell people to lightly scramble the egg before adding it to the mixture, but then people thought they were supposed to cook the eggs on the stove and make scrambled eggs out of them before adding it to the cheesecake, so I stopped doing that. Anyway, we're going to add the eggs 1 at a time and stir on low speed until just combined. after each addition. Number 2. Number 3. And here's where I usually pause to scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl, which is also going to help prevent any lumps. And you can absolutely make this recipe in a stand mixer with a paddle attachment if you prefer. I am just using my electric hand mixer instead today. Number 4. All right, last one. Number 5. Let's scrape the bowl, make sure everything is well incorporated. Bring back our crust. Oops, gently. Did not go up high enough on that edge. All right, we'll let that be. Pour our cheesecake batter into the center of our crust. We do not waste cheesecake batter. Look, my crust did not go up high enough. I got too excited. Anyway, we're going to take this over to our 300-degree oven where it's going to bake for about 60 minutes. Now, to tell that your cheesecake is done, I like to just give it a little jiggle. The edges should be mostly set, but the center should still have some jiggle to it. If you want to make sure it's done, you can always use an instant read thermometer. The center should read at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so hopefully you can see you have a little bit of jiggle in the center still. So what we do next is we're going to set this cheesecake aside. Don't turn off your oven, by the way. We're gonna let this cheesecake cool for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, we're going to make that sour cream hat I was telling you about, the topping. So for this sour cream topping, you are going to need a pint or 16 ounces of a full fat sour cream, which I've already gone and put in this bowl here. We are going to add 1 cup of granulated sugar and also 1.5 teaspoons or half a tablespoon of vanilla extract. We are going to vigorously beat this together until it's well combined. You could do this with a whisk, but I prefer to do it with an electric mixer instead. So that was like 15 seconds of vigorous whisking on high speed, just to make sure everything's nicely combined. The sugar will start to dissolve a bit too. Make sure everything really is well incorporated. And then remember, your cheesecake was sitting for 5 minutes before you started making the sour cream topping. Now we can go ahead and add this to our cheesecake. Bring it back over here. And we're just going to go ahead and pour this over the cheesecake. Try to pour it evenly, that way you don't end up cratering the center under the weight of it. And you can see this almost fills my whole springform pan. I love this springform pan. All right, now we go back to the oven, should still be at 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to cook it for just 5 minutes longer, which is going to help make that topping set. Now, don't be alarmed if your filling still looks a little bit liquidy. It's going to firm up as the whole cheesecake cools. So as with any cheesecake, it is so important that you let the cheesecake cool completely before you cut into it. What I will usually do is I'll let it sit at room temperature for an hour, maybe a couple of hours until it's no longer super warm, and then I'll transfer it to the fridge, and it needs to sit in the fridge for at least 6 hours, preferably overnight. I had someone the other day tell me their cheesecake was super underdone and it wasn't finished all the way and my recipe was terrible. Then I found out they pulled it out of the oven and cut into it. So don't be that person, I beg of you. So this one is going to cool. Already a little bit cool, as you can probably tell by the fact I'm touching the pan. And I do have a cheesecake that I prepared yesterday. So this has been sitting in the fridge overnight, and I already did take a knife and run it around the edge of the pan just to loosen it. Let's go ahead and open this up. Now, some people ask when you should remove the collar from the springform pan. I leave it in the springform pan until I'm ready to serve it, and then when I'm ready to store it, I just put the collar back around it. Sometimes I cover it with foil, sometimes I don't. So I use that to store the cheesecake, any leftovers as well. This is pretty beautiful. And since we used homemade vanilla, I don't know if the camera's picking this up, but we have all these little black flecks in there, which are just so beautiful. Let's dig into this family favorite cheesecake. I'm so excited to share this one with you. 2 slices. One for Nikki, one for me. And that is how you make my family's New York style cheesecake. I really do hope you love this recipe. If you try it, leave me a comment and let me know what you think. Make sure you check out my whole catalog of other cheesecake recipes I've shared on the blog. I have some pretty crazy ones, including an apple pie cheesecake that I love. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Are you ready to try some cheesecake? No, I'm just kidding. You can't have any cheesecake. Eat your bubbles. Let's go ahead and try it. That's a good cheesecake, isn't it? What do you think? This really is a good cheesecake. Could put some fresh fruit on this. Oh, that was not much of a cut. There we go. I'm sorry you can't have any. You want to try a bite? Yeah. That's quite a bite. What do you think? Yeah? I didn't think you really liked cheesecake. Ella wants some. What do you think? Thank you so much for watching. I keep wanting to say, and I love you. That's not right.